All right, welcome to part 4 of the 3D text rock project. So here we are back in Photoshop. This is where we left off last tutorial, and pretty much we had escaped the idea of, bringing in the texture directly from Maya and actually using the 3D type with the texture just clip. So that's where we left off before. We had drop shadow and affected light in the background. So now what I want to do is actually mask out some of the text to make it more rocky looking. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to simply add a layer mask on the text layer. So click on the square circle here, and if I zoom in here, what will happen is you can see how everything has sharp edges. So I'm going to switch to my paintbrush tool by hitting the B key. I'm in the mask, so it defaults to black and white, and I'm going to make sure I have the hard round brush selected and 100% opacity. And essentially what I can come around here is make sure that I don't have transfer set, just shape dynamics set to pin pressure. So I have a stylus right now, and what I'm going to do come in here is basically just trim off certain areas and allow the rocks to kind of speak for themselves. So you can see here as I come into this area, make the rock sort of stand out a little bit more. And I can kind of reposition and do this in different areas wherever I want. So and the whole idea of this is just to make the text even that much more exciting, basically by moving around and knocking down little edges, just making it feel a little bit more rocky, so to speak. And yeah, basically breaking up that silhouette a little bit. So wherever I feel like pulling it out a little bit more, just by knocking it back, I can do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause. I'm not going to, have you sit here and do this for the whole tutorial. I just wanted to show you how I would go about doing this, and then I'll pause and show you the end results here in just a sec. Alright, so basically if I move about here, sometimes it's very subtle, but you can kind of see what's going on here in terms of the image. I've kind of nicked away at the different parts of the text in subtle areas. So it's a very subtle effect, but it adds a lot. If I hold shift and remove the mask there, you can see all those little areas where I kind of chipped away at it. Basically what this allows you to do is create more authentic sort of looking type, because it's a little bit more rocky, a little bit more realistic in the sense of not having all those hard edge lines. That's the real danger with anything that's rendered through a 3D application. So the next thing I want to do is actually add a levels adjustment. I'm going to click on the texture to actually do this, because I want to lighten the whole area here. I'm just going to add a levels adjustment and basically drag in the light slider here, and I'm going to make sure it's clipped. So I'm going to click on this little icon here. So it's just affecting the type here. And I do want to just brighten it up a little bit. I felt like it was just a little bit too bright, and then darken a little bit there. And that's looking pretty good. Now, the final steps I'm going to do is I'm going to add some overall noise, and then I'm going to add some lighting effects first, and I'm going to clone out a different area. So I'm going to actually collapse the group and add a new layer right above it, and then do this weird hotkey, Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E on a Mac, to make a mergeable copy of this layer. And at this point, what I'm going to do is use the healing brush, because I don't like this little spot here. So I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to shrink down my brush a little bit and kind of just paint over, a couple areas here. See if I can get rid of that little spot there pretty good. And that did a pretty good job. There's a couple of little areas here. It looks like I accidentally got that. Got to be careful sometimes the different direction, because I grabbed the text here. It actually still wants to do that. So sometimes you have to use the clone stamp tool, which is the hotkey of S, and just make sure if you want it to be 100% opacity, and choose all layers instead of current layer if you are working on multiple layers. So I'm going to clone a little bit from here, just knock back that little bit there, and that looks pretty good. So next what I'm going to do is now duplicate this layer, and the reason why, and the window popped up on my other monitor because I'm on my Cintiq right now. Click OK. The reason why is basically in case I make a mistake, I can basically drop the opacity of this layer. But what I want to do now is switch to my paintbrush tool And I want to switch to a different blend mode. So I'm going to switch to color dodge, which will reduce some really cool painting effects. And then I hold Alt or Option and select a color here. So I'm going to select a nice light gray and kind of drop the opacity maybe around 20%. And then I want a soft brush when I'm painting this. And I need to increase the size a little bit here. And so let's look at the brush settings here. So I have shape dynamics, that's fine. And as I paint, what will happen is I will essentially brighten up these areas here. And I like to do this, so it's kind of like hand painting or hand burning your image in, just by painting across the surface. Basically, I'm just bringing out that type a little bit more. You don't want to take it too far. You just want to be careful not to take it too far, but I feel like these guys should stand out a little bit more. In fact, I'm going to have a little bit of hot spot down here underneath the text. Increase that hot spot a little bit and actually have it affect the type even more drastic in a couple areas here. And I'm just kind of tapping the surface wherever I want to be in here. I just want it to be a little bit stronger, like against this dark. Maybe have a little bit of the light kind of flicker in the shadow area here, which would be kind of cool. A little bit there. And then next blend mode I want to switch to is the color burn blend mode. Now this is going to actually do the opposite. It's going to actually darken the image. And so I'm going to select the shadow color, but I'm going to drop it down to 10%. So I hit the 1 key to do this because it's gonna create a crazy amount of shadow here. But I just kind of want to have, especially in these areas where it's not quite so interesting, to darken it up a little bit. Try a little bit in the text maybe. Just barely touching the surface to kind of create a little bit more contrast. I'm kind of liking that. That looks pretty good overall. So the last thing is, right now the noise level is a little bit different for the text and the rock here. And again, if I wanted to, I could drop sort of the opaciest layer if I want these to blend together. But I think I like actually where this is at. Maybe I'll drop a little bit. Just have a little bit of blend there between 80% or so. So now what I want to do is actually create a noise layer. So I'm just going to actually create a new layer, and then go to the edit command and choose fill and choose 50% gray and click OK. And then what I'm going to do is change the blend mode to overlay. And so overlay, you'll notice if I turn off the eyeball, no effect has happened to this image here. So now what I can go is the filter menu and choose noise and choose add noise. And in here I want uniform checked and monochromatic checked. So you can see with monochromatic unchecked, you get all these crazy colors going on in there. So if you check that, you can see it's kind of grayscale there. And then the amount of noise is going to be subtle, probably around 7%. So I usually type in like 7 there and then click OK. And now if I zoom in here, you can see it's got a little bit of speckling of the noise there. If I turn it on and off, it just unifies the surface just quite a bit to kind of finish off the image. So that concludes our final tutorial in the Maya and Photoshop, working with both programs to create these awesome 3D rock texture. So I hope you've enjoyed this project. And until next time, see you soon at Adobe Photoshop and Maya, Autodesk Maya. Cheers!